Captain Starlog, March 12th, 2155. Shuttlepod 1 has just departed the surface of Vulcan on a return trip to the Challenger. It's my first time to Vulcan, and I didn't even get to leave the ship. Frankly, there wasn't much of a reason to. After all, what use is a scientist in a prisoner transfer? I asked Sub-Commander Tassal if she wanted to return home, but she declined. I don't know if it's impolite to ask why, so I've left it alone. Anyways, since the coalition was signed, the Vulcans are trying to be more neighborly, especially where the Andorians are concerned. So when the Andorians requested extradition of a prisoner back to Andoria, the Vulcans agreed. We're here because the Andorians still don't trust the Vulcans. Long story short, the brig will be getting some use. Welcome back, everybody, to another mission in Star Trek Adventure's Captain's Log. We will be continuing with my 2200s character, Captain Sam Bronson, captain of the NX-03 Challenger. First off, before we dive into the mission today, I want to thank all of you for subscribing to the channel. With your help, we absolutely blew past 100 subscribers. I promised the subscribers that I currently had at the time in last week's episode, actually, the third part, that assuming we did pass that mark, I'd be wearing my NX Project flight jacket. I am, in fact, wearing it. So thank you all. I guess our next goal will be to hit 250, and we'll see where things go from there. I am currently looking at other options of things that I can continue to run. Captain's Log, as far as I am concerned, will be going on for quite some time, so don't worry about this going away anytime soon. In the meantime, let's go ahead and dive right in. So the Challenger is an orbital Vulcan. We know that there's a prisoner being transported. We know that they're being transported back to Andoria. And I guess we're going to find out exactly how things are going to progress. So let's go ahead and describe the scene. I think during that Captain's Log, we would have seen a shot of Shuttlepod 1 lifting off of the surface of Vulcan. We would have cut to the captain sitting in his ready room, narrating to his pad or his computer, probably his computer terminal on his desk. I think that's what we see Archer doing more often than not. And then we'd cut to a shot of Shuttlepod 1 coming into dock on the underside of the ship. Okay, with that, we'd then get a shot of the Challenger heading off at warp, probably warp 4 or so. I don't see any reason for them to be rushing. And we roll the theme song, which frankly I haven't thought about too much. That is important, but it hasn't been on the top of my list. So after the theme song, we cut back and we see a shot of the bridge. And currently Captain Bronson is not on the bridge. He's back in his ready room. But let's say we have our science officer, which would be Lieutenant Matthews. He's sitting there. Currently in the captain's chair is Commander Wilson. And as we watch, Lieutenant Matthews will notice something on his screen, turn around and look through the sensor hood. Sensor hood? I think that's a good word for it. I don't know that it's the right word, but it's a good word. And he'll say, Commander, I think you might want to see this. We've got, it looks like a vessel approaching our general vicinity. It's not one I recognize. And the commander will walk over and take a look through the sensor hood. And we'll get our first look. There's a little blip on a screen that shows the current system. Both Vulcan and Andoria would be marked. And we'd see an unidentified ship, a ship of unidentified design incoming. At this point, let's see. Commander Wilson will, I imagine, call the captain to the bridge. So a minute later, let's see. The captain will enter the bridge and ask for a report. We cut to, because we don't need to hear the explanation twice, we'd cut to a handful of minutes, maybe an hour later, as the unidentified ship approaches. And we're going to get our first task of the day. It is not Yeah, I guess we can do the captain doing the scan, the identification. So this is not a science-based task, but it would be based on Khan, I believe, seeing if he can recognize it. So let's go ahead and do... This would be Reason Khan. So it's a target number of 12. We are starting our first task. So it's only a difficulty of 1. No other modifiers, no threat, no momentum. I'm going to go ahead and use the gold dice, which fortunately match pretty closely. Pleased with that. Especially considering this is a knockoff. Alright, we end up with 1 success. We rolled a 9 and a 15. So our first success, the captain does in fact recognize the ship, or at least enough about the ship to make a judgment call. And he would turn and say, actually, this is a good time to, before he says anything, this is a good time to use our probability matrix. Now, I think, because this is an Andorian prisoner, and it's dramatic to have there be an attempted prison break, I think that it's probably Andorian, but there's a chance that it's not. So let's go ahead and roll, going with the probable line on the probability matrix. So a 1 to a 15, it is Andorian. A 16 to a 20, it's not. And if it's not, I have one idea that I think fits with this part in the timeline, and we'll just see where it goes. 6, so we do indeed have an Andorian ship. It's not one that's in the Starfleet database. It looks like a civilian ship, and as they approach, the Challenger is hailed, and Subcommander Tassal informs the captain of that, and he requests her to put it on screen. And because this is my absolute favorite shot in Enterprise, we're going to have a repeat of the shot where Archer is looking at the view screen, and Shran pops up, and Archer looks like he has Shran's antenna for a minute. Best shot in all of Enterprise. You can complain about that in the comments if you disagree, but I don't think you can, because it's true. So we're going to repeat that shot. We're going to see Captain Bronson with antenna for a second as the camera pans around him from behind. And then we'll see an Andorian, definitely not wearing an Imperial Guard uniform, but he will say, Pink-skinned Captain, we humbly request you return prisoner to us, Thalen Kiste, and we request you do so immediately. Bronson will look at him, kind of stand up and take a couple steps forward out of his chair. Say, I don't know who you are, but this prisoner of ours has been requested to be returned to the Andorian government. Do you speak for the Andorian government? That's none of your concern, Pinkskin. And at this point, let's go ahead and do an insight security test. Target number 12. We just want to see what Captain Bronson can learn about these Andorians. Again, 1 success, a 7 and a 17. Dice are cooperating so far today. So, he's looking over this Andorian. I'm pretty sure that the most logical scenario is this Andorian is a former compatriot of the prisoner, Thalen Kiste, however I pronounced it the first time, and is trying to get his boss back. But what's more clear, and I think this is really what the test will show, is that his ship is very subtle in its weapons, but the weapons look like they will pack a bigger punch than might otherwise be evident. So, he's going to say, kind of give a hand gesture to, at Tactical, where his first officer is now sitting, Commander Wilson, and we'd see her tap a couple of buttons on the console, and we get an indication from her that maybe we even cut to a shot of what she's doing on the screen, and we'd see she's charging or polarizing the whole plating, and pre-charging the phasers. So the captain continues, well, unfortunately, without an express written document from the Andorian government, there's no way we can hand over our prisoner to you at this point in time. If, however, you'd like to escort us back to Andoria, we'd be sure happy to speak with the Imperial Guard and see if we can't resolve the situation. And it's at this point, I think, that the Andorians would realize that they don't have a whole lot of other choice. So we're going to get into a ship combat, which is the first time I've done this. Now, one of the things I've noticed in Captain's Log in particular is that the Enterprise-era ships get a little bit shafted in this. So if I go to the, let's see, Starfleet or Starship conflict chart, well, first off, we have scale +2 hits for us. Well, okay, I guess that balances it out a bit. But the thing that I noticed that was a little odd to me was the fact that when firing with the ship, you use the ship stats, right? But the Captain's Log, or the Enterprise-era ships all have low stats in comparison to every other era. And again, I get that, but when you're looking, comparing era to era, if you look at just the Enterprise era in the original game, all the stats are pretty much on an even footing. But in this, because we're just rolling against the target number and a failure is a hit on us, that does kind of leave them out in the cold. So instead of like an original series era, if I pull up, because I haven't looked at this in a minute. We're getting into the weeds here a little bit, but I want to cover this just to see if any of you have any thoughts as to what I'm noticing, if it's not as bad of a deal as I think it is, or what. Let me go ahead and pull up Commander Paulson. Yeah, so the weapons and security is a 10 for the Shepard class, whereas for the NX class, weapons security is an 8. So regardless of what we do, we are at a disadvantage compared to later eras. A ship like the Defiant might have a 12 or might have a 15 or some crazy high number, which means in general they're going to succeed at their sort of task. So it's just something I noticed. At the moment, I am going to be willing to fudge the numbers if things start to go bad. But again, if I'm missing something as far as that is concerned, please do let me know in the comments. So we've got Challenger and we've got the Andorians. We have 5 hits. They've got, let's see, this would be a scale 3, same scale as we are. So at least we get to go through 5. Now, let me just real quick take a look. Any hits, at hits equals scale, critical damage always results, each hit beyond scale. Okay, so I need to flip this around. And put a little divider in there. Awesome. So the first 2 hits don't do any critical damage. After that, they do. That's what I thought it was, but let's go ahead and dive into this. So I think, unfortunately, because... Well, no, Bronson was ready, so we have the initiative. We're not firing first, though, so we would automatically take a hit, which is unfortunate. But such is the way of things, because Starfleet does not fire first. So let's go ahead and roll. We have a target number of 8. This could be a little tricky. However, that is a 2, so we do get a success. However, we do also, because it's me, I roll the 20, we generate a threat. So this is going to be just dandy. On our next roll, we're going to go ahead and spend that threat right away, because I don't like to have to... Actually, let's see. No, we're just going to... I don't want to make the next task more difficult. That's really handicapping us. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I should be doing this in pencil and not in pen. I'm going to go ahead and remove that last, or I just won't mark the next damage I take. So I'm spending the remove 1 hit from opposition. We're going to go ahead and take another shot. The Challenger is beginning to take evasive actions. I don't know that I want to bother with doing an actual... Let's see. Yeah, I don't think I want to bother doing actual evasive actions. There's some things I can do for that, but we'll skip that for now. So we're going to go ahead and take our second shots, continuing to fire phasers. That is a failure. So we have our second bit of damage on us. The Andorians managed to avoid our phaser shots and gets a good shot in along the, let's see, the ventral hull. I think I got that right. Ventral is the underside, correct? Ventral is the underside. Yes, awesome. So the Challenger is going to try and head out, increase speed, begin to loop around to come with a second pass. Maybe they, I think they're going to continue with phasers until they actually get their first hit. Okay, fantastic. So our target number was again an 8. We rolled a 6 and a 9. So I already have that first hit marked. We'll say that the Andorians' shields are down to 60%, whereas the Challengers are down to probably 30% after the first 2 hits. I think Bronson would order the order to fire photon torpedoes just for flavor. Gonna see if they can do a larger burst of damage, take the shields all the way down right now. So let's see what they can do. That's a 12 and a 19. That's another failure. So we have lost our shields, and the ship has taken the first bit of critical damage. Fantastic. Or, sorry, not lost our shields. We have lost our hull plating. Hull plating is offline. So the critical damage table is where? 215. Let me find the critical damage table and I'll get right back to you. Alright, here we are at the ships and stations. We need to see what system is hit. And then we'll roll, let's see. Yeah, we'll start with what system is hit. And then we'll see, we'll leave it at that. I think for this first time we don't need to bother with the type of damage. We might. We'll roll it for fun and see if we decide to do it. Again, with my belief that the ships are a little underpowered in the Enterprise era, we might not bother with that much. But let's go ahead and take a look. 18. Oh, that's great. That's weapons. So our weapons have taken a bit of damage. Let's go back to 215 where we can learn exactly what that does for us. Let's see. System has critical damage. Well, let's, at this point, our hull plating is down and we are running into trouble. So I think we're going to come to a point where Captain Bronson is not willing, actually. This is a good time for a value to be used. So I think we're going to use my crew comes first no matter the cost as our value. We're going to attempt a repair, perhaps. No, we're not going to attempt a repair. We're going to do emergency repairs, structure engineering. That's a little bit better. That's a 9. And we will generate a momentum for this if we're going to challenge that value. Okay, let's see what we can do with a 9. Okay, 3 and a 19. We didn't need to use that momentum, but we have it if we need it. So we do manage to remove the critical damage from the weapons. The weapons are back online. That was instead of attacking, which means there's no chance for us to get damaged this round. So I don't necessarily know. I'm not as familiar with ship combat. Again, this is the first time in 6 missions that I've done ship combat. So I don't necessarily see how the ship can continue to take damage. I could just sit there and repair for the rest of the time. But we've performed our task. We don't do this success or failure tracker. We're not going to spend our momentum. We could actually spend our momentum to remove a hit. So I think we're going to do that now, actually. And with that, we're back in the fight. So let's go ahead and take another shot. The Challenger swings around for another pass, firing phasers once again, looking for an 8 or lower. That is a 6. We have our second success. The Andorian vessel is now kind of limping along. Maybe they took a hit to their engines or something. Actually, since we have that table, they have a hull breach, but it looks like it's in a non-invasive or non-critical part of the ship. So with that, let's go ahead and attempt to disable them, and they are very specifically shooting to disable. So, and I did spend that momentum. Let's go ahead and roll our last set. Again, another 6. I would like to roll other numbers than that at some point. But that will be a success. And we see... Do the Andorians have something else up their sleeves? At least their weapons are disabled. They can no longer attack us. But let's see. Do they have any way to get out of here? The answer is yes. So I think that they probably manage a low warp jump. Maybe they hit like warp 1 or warp 2 and just get quickly out of range. Starfleet, especially carrying a prisoner, is not going to be likely to chase them down. And that's certainly the case here. So Captain Bronson, at this point, calls for all hands to stand down from battle stations. And I think he's going to go and speak with Thalen Kiste, who is our prisoner. So he walks down to the brig, accompanied by, again, we'll say, this time he's going to be accompanied by Major Lambert, the Mako, and a member of, another member of her Mako squad. I should probably write down a handful of names, at least for the Makos at some point. But he approaches, and I think he's going to start a conversation with the prisoner. And I'm not going to role-play this one out so much, but he's trying to figure out exactly what's going on. The Vulcans were a little cagey, perhaps, about exactly what he'd done, and the Andorians certainly didn't tell the humans. So let's go ahead and do a presence security test to see if he can interrogate Thalen Kiste. I really love rolling 20s. I wish I could do that on D&D. Okay, I rolled another threat, as evidenced, but I also did roll a 5 for a success. So we have our 4th success of the act here. And we learn from Thalen Kiste that he was a dissident Andorian. His only crime, so he claims, is in... let's see. Is he actually guilty of the crime that he has supposedly committed? That's a good question. Let's go ahead and roll on the probability matrix. I don't necessarily care. I don't see the story going one way over the other. So let's go ahead and roll a straight. Yes, he's guilty. No, he's not. Yes, he's guilty. So he says the only thing he's guilty of is believing in Andoria, and I think he'd probably make some disparaging remark against Captain Bronson. He's say something like, "I heard you even have one of them aboard as a member of your crew," referring to Subcommander Tassal. All right, so he's some kind of dissident, and the captain has managed to wheedle that out of him. Probably wasn't very hard. Probably played into his ego, the kind of very lofty ego of the Andorians that we've seen in the past. Maybe he believes now that the Imperial Guard is not up to defending their borders against the Vulcans, and that the civilian government's decision to ally with the Vulcans and the humans and the Tellarites can only bring trouble in the future. So we'll see then, after Bronson has finished this conversation, maybe he heads to speak with Dr. Kieran in sickbay, who is our Andorian crew member, Theodoros Kieran. So he heads down to sickbay, And I think he's going to have... I think this is also our first time seeing Dr. Kieran. But he... The Doctor's got kind of a long face, very thin, is wearing an Imperial Guard uniform. Although it's very much evident that it's not like high ranking or anything. It's more of a... He's wearing the uniform because that's the only way he could get aboard a ship. So I think as they have a conversation, the captain is going to see what he's about. He doesn't know him too well. They launched less than a month ago. He's probably gone in and had a couple of conversations with him. I don't think he does what Archer does and has crew for breakfast. I think, in fact, Bronson eats in the mess hall with everybody else. And that the captain's mess... I think in Enterprise they replaced... Did they replace the captain's mess with the tactical suite in the Xindi season? I don't remember. But either way, I think that he does not use the mess hall for that original purpose. His dining room for that original purpose. So I think he would eat in the mess hall with the regular crew. So we might have had a meal with our Andorian doctor before. But they have a conversation, and he asks... what the general opinion amongst Andorians is on the Coalition. And let's see, what is the general opinion? I think it's probably pretty mixed. At this point in time, the Andorians, the Vulcans, there was a whole bunch of news about the Vulcans trying to set off a war between them and the Andorians through subtle, underhanded means. We just had the Romulan hologram ship, a holodeck ship, or whatever you want to call it, creating trouble. And then we also just had, not too long in the past, a couple of years in the past, the issues with Pajem and the Vulcans spying, and then the attempted stealing of the Xindi weapon and all of that nonsense. So I think things are still quite heated, and maybe a little more of the population than not is still against the Vulcans strongly, and the Doctor would come out and say that. But it's evident from their conversation that he is not of the same opinions. Now, I've been trying to think as I've talked about what the Doctor thinks and would say to Captain Bronson. I've been trying to think of a fifth task here as they approach the Andorian system. But I can't think of one. So let me go ahead and take a look at my notes from what I rolled earlier. So at this point, the captain would hear a comm signal coming from the panel in sickbay. That's the communicator sound, but it's close enough. And he'd head over and get a request or, inform the bridge that he's there and ready for whatever message is coming. And would be told that they're picking up an old-style radio signal coming from a system not too far off their current course. And it looks, according to sensors... Actually, let's go ahead and roll. We'll have Captain Bronson order Lieutenant Matthews to analyze the waveform and see what he can pick out. So we're going to go ahead and do a present science. Actually, let's do a reason command for this. As he orders the science officer to see what he can learn from the waveform. Alright, so we did have, and I was going to say I was going to use my threat there, but in this case it turns out well, because I rolled double sevens, which is the 2 successes that we needed to get through that task. And I think Lieutenant Matthews would be able to tell the captain that the radio signal is badly degraded and it looks like it was jury-rigged, as opposed to something like an older class of ship. Looks like it was jury-rigged, and the location of the radio signal, based on the decay from absorption in between wherever it looks like it's coming from and where they are, like it's no more than about half a light year off their current course. So Captain Bronson, being who he is, would order a course correction. And that's where we're going to end Act 1. So I did challenge a value, first time for that, I believe, in this series, and we did have our first bit of ship combat. So, in the next act, we will see what this so-called marooned vessel has to do with anything, and we'll see what we learn about Thalen Kiste and the current political situation on Andoria. In the meantime, I hope you all have an excellent day, and live long and prosper.